Um, I always love that. But I always equate, and it's so silly, and I don't know why I say it, but when I open the webinar, I always think it's like, oh, it's opening the doors and people are coming in. It's like, come on into the room, everybody.
Welcome. One at a time.
Welcome. Come one at a time.
One at a time. Don't step on each other.
Don't rush in. So we've got everybody coming in now and starting to settle in. Welcome as you're coming in here. We are recording this, and I'm going to go right now and start the process to take us out to Facebook Live too. So that takes a minute or two for me to, well, not quite a minute. Look, it's going to take me less than probably like 20 seconds.
You're a pro now. You do it really fast.
God, like, those first few months, wasn't it?
We've come a long way.
We have come a long way. And since our first one was in April with the couch surfing. But then we did our first live one because we were testing for couch surfing on March 30th of last year. And yeah, like 10 days after shutdown, we were like trying to figure this out. And let me tell you what, well, what's happened too, though, which I love, is that the technology's gotten so much better. I mean, Facebook and Zoom talk to each other, and you know, we're able to get this all done. So anyways, I digress. So for those of you that are on Facebook, welcome. And those of you in the Zoom webinar with us, welcome. And Megan and Lisa, welcome. How are you guys?
Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. Congratulations on the launch of Such a Quiet Place. When did it launch? Like a few weeks ago, a couple weeks ago?
2 weeks ago, July 13th. Yeah.
July 13th. Congratulations. We were just talking in the green room a minute ago that you got to do a little bit of an in-person, but this is your second book that you're releasing during the pandemic, during this. So, but we love making sure that everybody knows about it and hears about it though. So thank you for being with us for this. Like I said, I'm filling a little bit of airtime. I'll give you all a little bit of what's going to happen here. Just letting Facebook know that we're live as well. So for those of you that aren't familiar with who Warwick's is, if you're joining us, Lisa, you're here in San Diego area with us. We're both up in the North County of San Diego, and Megan, you're joining in from North Carolina. Is that correct?
It is.
Yep. So hopefully we have people from both coasts and maybe somewhere in between that are joining us too. So you never know. So let us know in the chat who's here and what's happening. But for those of you that aren't familiar with Warwick's, we're located in San Diego, just a little bit north in a little town called La Jolla. We are celebrating, my little sign said it was 1896. We're celebrating our 125th anniversary this year. Yeah, so it's major. It's major. It's a big anniversary for us, big milestone. So if you are familiar with us, come in the store. I'm going to be putting in Megan's book into the chat in both the Zoom webinar and also into Facebook, so you can easily click on that. We'd love to have you come in. You can pick up in store and come in and look at all other great things. We have Liz and Lisa's books there as well. Their latest is How to Save a Life. And so that's at the store as well. I'll be putting that into the chat. So come in and see us, or we'll ship it to you. I like to say anyway, there is a book, get a book, you can get it from Warwick. So.
And they do it media mail and it comes fast. So, I mean, Liz and I have both ordered a ton of books, and you know, it's hardly anything for shipping, and you get it like way quicker than you would think. So
yeah, it's not as bad as everybody's like, oh, it takes weeks. And it's like, no, it's
just like click, you're done. The book's there.
I'm a bookstore. I've got to do my due diligence on sales. We so appreciate everybody who buys books from us. I mean, it's one of those things where if you aren't going to support Warwick's, support a local independent that's near you. What else? Liz and Lisa are going to chat for about 30-ish. Liz and Lisa.
It's okay.
What have I been?
Again, Liz isn't here tonight, but she is here in spirit from Mexico, thinking about us as she's floating around the pool.
She's floating around the pool
I'm sure.
In Mexico.
Yeah.
With a cocktail in her hand, I'm sure, which is just like not okay. Lisa and Megan are going to talk for about 30-ish minutes. If you have a question for Megan, though, go ahead and put that in right away, because we're going to feed those in. Lisa will feed those into the conversation. So if you've got something that you want to know, go ahead and pop that in. If you're on the Zoom webinar, if you scroll over your screen, you're going to see the Q&A button down there that you can put that in. If you're on Facebook and you have a question, go ahead and pop that in the comment section. I'll feed that into Lisa. So did I do all my jobs, Lisa? Did I get everything?
You did a very nice job.
I think I did everything. So you guys have a great conversation. I'll see you in about a half hour.
All right. Thanks, Julie. Julie's being so modest, but she does an amazing job. I think she's kind of happy Liz isn't here. I'm getting the feeling because then she got to like take over Liz's job. And because Liz isn't here, we can say whatever we want. So that's the part I like. I never get a chance to speak when she's around. So hi, Megan, Miranda. We were just talking in the green room before this, so we actually haven't met in person, but over the years we have kind of met online. So it just feels like, right at this point, who do we know?
I love your guys' books, and I feel like I follow you guys on social media, so I feel like I know you. So I'm so excited to get to chat.
I know we love your books too, and like I told you, I had to think about it. Have I met her before? But the answer is no. So nice to like officially like talk to you, meet you face to face, and congratulations on your latest release. I have it right here. I got the Target copy. I bought this, and it has a special exclusive prologue in it. So I feel extra special over here to have this copy. So congratulations on the publication. It came out July 13th. I'm just going to read a little bio on you so everybody can kind of get caught up on who you are. Megan Miranda is the New York Times bestselling author of All the Missing Girls, The Perfect Stranger, The Last House Guest, which is a Reese Witherspoon book club pick, and I just read Being the Fanning Girls. Yes. Bought it to maybe make it into it. So crossing fingers that happens because that's amazing. And The Girl from Widow Hills. She has also written several books for young adults, including Come Find Me, Fragments of the Lost, and The Safest Lies. She grew up in New Jersey, graduated from MIT, and lives in North Carolina with her husband and 2 children. And like we just said, her adult suspense, Such a Quiet Place, was just published on July 13th. So welcome.
Thank you.
So far, it's already getting major praise. It's an indie next pick for July, Library Reads pick for July. Booklist gave it a star review and said that you are a master of misdirection and sudden plot twists leading up to a wallop of an ending, a powerful, paranoid thriller. Wow, that's an amazing endorsement, and your endings are always amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about what Such a Quiet Place is about?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much for that introduction.
I had to pare it down. There's more I could have said, okay, so.
That was amazing. So I love setting books in small towns, and I've been thinking a long time about pulling those boundaries even tighter and trying to set like a mystery or a thriller within the confines of a very small, close-knit neighborhood. So Such a Quiet Place is set in this really close-knit, idyllic neighborhood called Hollow's Edge. Everyone thinks they know everything about one another, and of course, this isn't true. And about a year and a half earlier, the neighborhood was really rocked by this horrific crime. A couple next door to the main character were found killed. And the neighbors all worked together to piece together their security cameras and their doorbell cameras to basically implicate one of their neighbors named Ruby, and she was ultimately convicted. The book begins 14 months later as her conviction's overturned, and she comes right back into this neighborhood, right back into the house that she shared with her roommate Harper, and she's the narrator. And that's what kicks off the story. And like, no one's really sure if she's innocent or guilty. There's no good answer, because if she's guilty, then a killer's back in their neighborhood. And if she's truly innocent, presumably a killer has been there all along. So it just shakes everything up.
It's such a good idea, especially incorporating like the ring doorbell, and I'll have a question about this in a minute, but the like community forum, which is a lot like Nextdoor, which we can all relate to. But how did you think of the idea itself, and how do you generally think of your ideas? Do you have like a book of a ton of ideas and you just open up, oh, this one, or is it just kind of one at a time?
It's definitely more like one at a time. And it's also something I feel like ideas percolate for a while, and they start as smaller things, and suddenly they like merge into the, aha, this is the book idea that I want to be writing. And so I had been thinking for a long time about writing my neighborhood book. My friends and family have heard me talking about this for years, like one day I'm going to write that book set in a neighborhood, but I didn't really feel like I had the aha spark of the
Mhm.
idea. And I read so much suspense. I love suspense. It's my favorite genre. I watch a lot of it. I watch true crime and documentaries. And I always find myself at the end when there's a resolution asking, I wonder what happens next. Because even though there's like that closed resolution, in a way, it feels like a story is just beginning. And that was the aha moment for this story, that it is sort of a story set in the aftermath. At the start of the book, the crime has happened, the person's been convicted, and yet how does everyone move on from there? And then especially as this case is overturned and nothing is really as it seems. So I really was inspired by this idea of the aftermath, or somebody had said like it's almost like a season 2 of like a documentary, and in a way it does
Mhm.
feel like that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've talked a lot about the themes that you like to in your books. You'll have, complex female friendships. You'll have returning, from the past. Why are those themes that you're drawn to and that you keep wanting to return to in this book and your others?
It's such a good question, because I have to ask myself, like, why do I kind of keep writing the same idea in different ways? And I think for me, like, themes are questions to explore. And I feel like there's so much richness and nuance in these concepts, and you can just explore them in so many different angles. A few books ago, somebody had asked me to describe my book in 3 words, and I said, the past returns. And I realized
Mm,
that could describe pretty much all of my adult books. And I just, I started in YA, and I think kind of writing that almost inspired the ideas for my adult books, because I was thinking about, these characters are enduring these huge things that happen when they're younger. And what happens as they get older? Do they try to leave this behind? Does it like highly impact the people they become? And those are just things I find really interesting, like how we become the people we become. And then especially in relationships, I just think there's so much nuance in these intense relationships. And I like the idea that not everything is all one thing. There can be pros and cons and highs
right.
and lows. And there's no like clear-cut answers. So it's just so much to uncover.
And I think that's why people keep returning to your books, and why, because not only are you getting like a page turning thriller, but you're getting like a really interesting story, you're getting interesting characters, and we can all relate to those themes, right? I mean, our pasts are always coming up in different ways. And so I think in that way, there's a lot of relatability. And I do like how you brought that to this book, as well as bringing in, tell us about the community forum I mentioned, because I was thinking, oh my gosh, like you never do know what's going on, and I live in kind of a close knit neighborhood like that too. And so how did you decide to interweave that, and why?
Yeah. I love thinking about structure when I'm writing, and I think about like what's the right way to tell a story. And when I started writing the idea, the first character I came up with was Ruby, who's the character who, returns home, and kind of instinctively I thought, well, this would be her story, but I didn't want it to be, because Ruby knows what she did, whether she's innocent or guilty. So I wanted it to be somebody who doesn't know. And I almost thought that the whole neighborhood is in a way the main character, the narrator. But I write all my books from first person. And so Harper was the narrator, but I really wanted to include this cast of characters. And it's much larger cast than I usually write. And I realized I was still in my first chapter when I realized like I could really incorporate all of them in this message board and give you a
Hmm.
piece of their personality that maybe you're not seeing face to face. And it made me think like thematically, talking about themes, the ways people talk in person versus the things they say behind a screen. And it just showed another layer to these characters. And it also helped me with tension, because it felt like it could tell you of things to come that maybe weren't on the page. So maybe they're not talking about the July 4th party, but they're planning it because it's on the message board. They're like, planning the July 4th party. What are you bringing? Also sign up for the neighborhood watch right below it. So it was just, yeah, it's fun.
We just had a big July 4th party here. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is like relating in so many ways. And just on that note, so this just takes place over a very short period of time, and why did you want to do it that way? I love when books take place over short time periods. I think it's great, but why did you pick that for this particular story?
Yeah, I find that in my last few books, I feel like I'm getting shorter and shorter in the time frame. And I also think I realize that I don't write procedurals. And so I don't get too much into the actual investigation. And I realize that at some point, this investigation is really going to pick up speed. And so in a way, I feel like I'm almost doing that to outrun the steps of an investigation.
Right.
Suddenly everything is like, very structured and the police are stepping in. And I like that it's really just the characters and people who are not the police who have to solve this crime or kind of live in that danger. So that's sort of, I guess, the writing answer for
Right.
it. I also think there's so much tension when you can pull things tighter. Do you feel the same? Are you
Mhm. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
I just as a reader and a writer, that's how I prefer it. So I was just curious if, if first did you get the idea and then did you think, well, I should really just take place during probably this time period? And also your book's kind of coming out in July too. So is that maybe why you picked the 4th? I don't know. Or is that just, did you
It
pick it because
was
it's a big, like, just
coincidental.
coincidence?
Yeah,
Okay.
I knew I wanted to have this July 4th party as sort of like the fulcrum of this,
Right.
book. And like the fact that it came out right after that was just a wonderful
Perfect.
coincidence. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So we're kind of talking about it, but I did have a question about your writing process itself. When you sit down to write a book, do you outline first? Do you figure out your characters beforehand, or does that kind of evolve as you go? And do you write in order?
Yeah, I love hearing other writers' answers
Yeah,
for this because I'm like fascinated how we all have such different processes and yet we all kind of
right.
get to the same place. I am not a plotter. Like I have severe envy for people who can plot because I can't see a story like that. Are you the same? Do you? Okay.
Yeah, not at all. Although when we wrote our 2 suspense books, we felt like we had to be just to figure out all that. So I'm intrigued if you're still not with suspense, because that means that's just taking it to a whole nother level, I think.
I I'll say I try, but I
Right.
really don't. So I start with character and premise, and that's when I dive in. And um, I usually don't know I never know the end. Like I'll never
Right.
know who did it really.
Not even maybe this person or nothing.
I
You're
say
just
by the time
like,
I get, yeah, no, nothing. Like by the time I
wow.
get to 50 pages, I feel like I've narrowed it down, but I like going in not knowing because I feel like my character doesn't know and I can like even if I can relate
Hmm.
nothing in their personal experience, I can relate to that uncertainty and that fear and that tension. And I mean, there's a point in my book where I panic if I don't have it figured out. But so what I do is I try to see like the turning points. So there was something that happened around the halfway point in this book that I knew pretty much in the first few pages. And so I
Okay.
felt like if I had the confidence that like I could write to that point and that was going to give me the structure of figuring out these characters and what their motivations were. And at that point, I could see where the end was going to go. So I feel like as long as I can see those shifts, then I can write to that point.
Right.
There's some books I've gotten really far in, like panic level far in. But and so I have to build in a lot of time for revision though, because I mean the
Right,
work
because
that
you have
you
to
did
go
before,
back and then drop,
right?
your clues and your thing. And if you don't know as you're going,
Yeah. So it's work one way or another. And so I just kind of have accepted that that's my process. And I think of the first part of a book as like you're discovering the clues. I keep a document like an Excel spreadsheet, and like every chapter, I'm like, these are the threads, these are the clues. And by the time I get to the second half, some of those aren't working or aren't
right.
relevant. And they have to be stripped out and other things added in. And so I feel like the first half of my book is usually reworked a lot by the time I get to the later half. So
Hmm.
you became a plotter for suspense, or are you a loose plotter or a
Well,
strict?
I would say we were loose, but we had an outline and we felt like we needed to.
Yeah.
Although I will say one of our big like clues kind of just accidentally did fall in our lap. So I can't say we had it all down, but we knew the ending.
Okay.
or we were down to like, it's either going to be this or this, but we mostly knew. But I think it's just because we felt like we had to, because we had always written, before that, just women's fiction, and we could do it. It's go wherever it wants to go. And nobody has to nobody did it. It's just so, I think we felt a little bit more maybe self-imposed pressure to do it that way, but it didn't feel confining. I do like your way though. And I've heard other suspense authors say the same, because you're almost you're finding it out just as the reader would, which I think makes it even better, and probably why you've sustained writing so many of these, right? And because it's not an easy genre at all. I can attest to that. So bravo to you on that, although it's just still like crazy to think. And I'm always so interested in how, like you said, how other writers write. But please, anybody listening in, if you have your own questions, because readers' questions, I think are always even better. So, because I'm going to ask a lot about stuff like that. Let's see, what do I have next here for you? Oh, we talked a little bit about this before, but I do think I'd love to hear more, before in the green room, about writing this during the pandemic. You started this book, you already had started it, but then you're really writing it during, and I was curious, how did that impact you, if at all, as you wrote?
Yeah, it's interesting.
And I guess we're still in the pandemic, by the way.
Yeah.
So I kind of said that like it was over. I think I want it to be over. But I get that we're still going. But I mean, it's in like the very beginning.
Yeah. And I feel like that beginning was the biggest sort of transition where we're all, and I always worked from home, so that part was an easier transition than for so many others. But I was used to being home alone, and suddenly school was kind of right outside the office door.
Yeah.
I feel like if you've read the book, it probably seems like a book I wrote in a pandemic, because it had such defined borders. Like nobody really left this neighborhood, but I came up with the idea beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote about maybe 50, 60 pages until March, when everything started shutting down. And I will be honest, my writing also shut down for a time. I had a really hard time accessing like that. I feel like I have to dive into a world and disappear into this other world. And there were, so much happening here that it made it so,
it was pretty common.
Yeah. So I took a few months, and I feel like it was figuring out what your new routine would be that worked. And like I was writing earlier in the day and kind of finding those hours at different times. I'm usually very structured in my work day, like kids are in school, those are my work hours. But it shifted. And I felt like the themes were just coincidentally even stronger related to this book. It was, it was just your neighborhood. And it was, I was we were all seeing so many more sides of each other than we normally did. And this book is the neighbors not only live together, they also work together. Most of them work at the college. And so there was like that element of you saw every side of one another in a way that maybe you don't in other neighborhoods. So I feel like in a way, it felt like the book I would have written at that time. But so it was, once I got like later into the summer, I felt like that story kind of started cruising. Did you have the same?
Yeah, we were writing during, and actually it was, I almost immediately told Liz, like, let's just do this as more of a distraction, but we were juggling all the same things. And so it was hard. But like you said, we write from home, and so that wasn't much different, but the juggling of the kids in the school and those things definitely impacted. But we kind of just dove in just to more not think about what was going on. But it is always, again, interesting to hear from other authors, as we've been doing this couch surfing tour now for like a year and some odd months, just to hear how everybody, because now you're lapping, a lot of us are lapping ourselves. It's like a second book coming out in the pandemic, or a second book written during the pandemic. So that's always fascinated to me. Julie does have a question, but first I have another question just about this cover. when I walk into a bookstore, we know it's yours, just from the branding, and it's such a great cover, but they all kind of like go together. Are you involved in design, and have you been over the years, or how does that work?
So how it works is like I look at it and go, oh my God, that's perfect. Like you've hit it out of the park. Like the Simon and Schuster art department, I feel like just nails it every time. And so
Yeah.
they send a few cover concepts, and they're very open and receptive to ideas. I am not like a visual person. Like I think if I were to give an idea, it would seem like a literal piece of the story, where they just capture like the feel.
Right.
And I think they sent this cover as one of the options, and all of us, like, my editor, we were like,
Yeah.
it's just, I love it. Also, obviously the feel and the way the trees are with the words.
Yeah, the trees, there's like, these are trees, and then you're looking down
But I
at the
feel like
neighborhood.
thematically, it's like you think you see everything because you're seeing the
Right.
you, and really you see nothing. And I feel like that's just exactly what this neighborhood is. Which
it's really good. What about the title?
yeah.
Was that always the title, or did that change? And are you a title person, or are you just kind of like, that's somebody else's department?
I think I'm a title person when I start, and then like I quickly realize I'm not a title person.
Right.
So like my first adult book, because I start titling it when I'm thinking about the themes, and All the Missing Girls was to me going to be about the way people disappear, and like
Right.
like literally or figuratively. And so I called it Disappear, and that's how it went out on submission, and that's what was its working title. And it was hard to kind of imagine something beyond that.
Right.
And so it usually is a conversation where we're pulling lines from books or pulling ideas.
Mhm.
And All the Missing Girls was like a combination of two different lines we were looking at. Such a Quiet Place, I'd started with a neighborhood. When I started like 50 pages, it was called Hollow's Edge, because I said, well, I'm writing about a neighborhood. So
Right.
and then I wrote a line that said, oh, everyone said we were such a quiet neighborhood. And then I was like, oh, that's the title. And then it kind of, we were talking about such a quiet street, such a quiet place. So this I felt like I was closer, but there are some books I turn in where I'm like, book 4, we'll talk about this later, because I know it's changed.
Yeah.
You always know your titles at the start, or you?
No, I think we do sometimes, like, and then we don't, I think, but we always have something, just to kind of a working title, just so there's something we can save it as, and that type of thing. Julie is asking, do you ever put any real neighbors or friends into books? And if you do they know, or do they, or probably more realistically, they think it's them, but it's not, right? That's happened to us before. And do they figure out who they are? Like, she's going to admit this, Julie.
I always to me, and characters are like the most fun for me, like, because I feel like you're creating the people and they become people. So I always think that like everyone is completely made up from scratch in my imagination. Right. And then people I know read the books and they don't see people like themselves in it, but they'll see pieces of me. Like they'll say, that's a line that I feel like you've said, or that's something you would say. And they'll send me, or there'll be little things, like there was a scene in The Girl from Widow Hills. It's like a throwaway line. And she's talking about the time there was a bat on her front porch, a baby bat. And my neighbor was like, I remember when there was a bat on your front porch, and you called me up like, there's a bat on my front porch. So like,
I see.
Little details make it in, but it's never. So my disclaimer is like, my neighbors are lovely. My neighborhood is lovely. This is not based on anyone I know.
Right. Yeah. Of course. Amy Huser is asking, any tips for a beginning writer working on their first book? That's a great question.
That is a great question. And I feel like my advice, I mean, it seems like simple, but my advice is really to just keep writing, like to write a lot and to read a lot. I feel like it's like any sport and any skill, like the more you do it, the more you find your unique voice and your unique perspective. And like none of my first drafts are like that great. And so, but every step gets me closer to it. And when I started thinking about writing for publication, I started reading across genres that maybe I wouldn't have read beforehand, and to think about what makes me connect to stories, what makes me want to keep reading. But yeah, that's kind of my general advice. What about you, Lisa?
My advice?
Mhm.
Oh, you're so nice. It's much the same. I mean, it's just, just don't give it up, just keep going and going and, network as much as possible. That was really how we got our way in was, and I hate to, now it's so much is virtual, but going to events, even things like this, just connecting with people and then, following up with an email, but just networking and getting to know just whoever you can in the business. So when you do have something written, maybe you know someone who knows someone to send it to too.
Yeah.
But I like your advice better. I think your advice is better.
They're both very helpful.
I also wanted to ask, speaking of reading, and I was curious, when you're writing a book, are you reading, and are you reading in the genre you're writing or in another one, and why?
I'm usually reading all the time.
Mhm.
I'll say about a month ago, I stopped for a bit. I was behind on deadline and kind of like dove completely into this world. And I was getting up like before 5 a.m. and going to bed like after everyone else. And it was just, the story kind of consumes you. And that's kind of the only time I'm not actively reading. I love suspense, so I will read it at all times. I do try, if I'm reading like a book summary, or I start reading it and there is an element that feels similar in any way,
Mhm.
I usually put it aside until I'm done. And it's almost like it's not even like I'm worried that I'm going to take something from it. It's more that I'm worried I'm going to go the other way and like not stay true to the story because I'm worried about this other
Right.
story that might
Right.
be similar. So like I didn't read stories that were set in neighborhoods for like the 6 months when I was like deep in this
Yeah, I can
world.
see that.
It's
I can
kind
see
of just a
that.
broad thing, but I would I'd be like, I'll wait. But so as soon as I was done, I was like, I'm going to read all the neighborhood books now.
Right. Right.
Yes.
What have you read lately that you would recommend, I guess, in suspense, since that's your fave?
Yeah, so I feel like I've been catching up on like books people were talking about all spring recently. So I
Right.
recently read The Plot, which I just loved.
Oh,
As like a writer and like not a writer, I feel like it's just fascinating from both
I
angles.
accosted this woman at the pool like a couple days, like, I read, oh my God, it's so good. Like, I just had to tell her how good it is. She's like,
Yes,
oh, thanks.
it was
I'll read it
just
now. Yeah.
riveting.
Yeah.
And then I am reading When the Stars Go Dark by Paula McLean, which is just
Mm.
absolutely beautiful. Like her writing is just so haunting. Like the writing is beautiful and the story is haunting. And then I I have this stack of books that I'm looking forward to reading. I
Yeah.
turned in a draft the day before this book came out. And so like now I have Riley Sager's new book. I have
Mm-hmm.
Kelly Garrett's Like a Sister, which I just started and is so great. It comes out early next year. What about you? More books to add to my list that you
Oh
recommend?
my gosh. I am always, what did I read? Oh, I just read Falling.
Oh, I haven't
Um,
read that yet.
and it was, can't think of her name though right now, but
TJ Newman, right?
yeah, really good, really just
Really
fast. Like I
great.
read it like super fast. So that's the one I read most recently. And but I have a stat. I mean,
Yeah.
and I can't, I was actually excited that hers was kind of short because I'm not the fastest reader. I'm like, have so many I want to get to. And it was like a real page turner. So I recommend that one. I actually ordered that one from Warwick's, Julie. That was you guys that sent it to me.
Pop back on.
There she is popping back on.
I
Did you
popped
like
back
my little
on.
segue
I
to
like
bring you
that.
back? I actually forgotten I had ordered it and it showed up because I ordered it like, a while back, it was like I could pre-order something.
Yeah. It was a
So, and then
pre-order
it showed
probably.
up and I was like, oh, good. I really wanted to read this. Like I forgot that I
wanted to read that one. Yeah, I did one of these like Zoom things, like it was a pre-pub thing with her. And so we were in like these little meeting rooms and I asked her, I was like, so I have a really bad fear of flying. Can I read this? And she's like, well, people have said they could, but I've like heard from other people, it's like, you probably don't want to read that.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extreme example.
Yeah, but if you even think that something
Right.
can happen like that,
Right.
it's like,
But that's
oh
what
my
makes it so
God.
good.
I know, exactly.
Well, just real quick, Megan.
Before we
it's been
close up, wait,
Yeah,
I got a question.
Oh.
I got another one.
Okay, yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead.
I know you're closing. I'll let you close out in a second.
Because I kind of talked on your
Oh no,
neighbor
you were
one.
cracking. No. But as I was sitting here, I was thinking, you're like she's gonna answer that.
She's like, well, actually, yes.
Well, actually,
My
all of
neighbor
my
Betty
neighbors are
is
that.
what the main character is based on.
I think actually, like, was it Candace Bushnell or somebody actually did like call out, just like, oh yeah, I write about all my friends. So just like, they're just like, they're all catty.
You never know. You never know. It's a good question.
No, but let's talk about like the whole. I know it's not this book that was the Reese Witherspoon. Speaking of a book that's good, have you guys read? And it's Reese's book this month, The Paper Palace.
I haven't read it yet.
It's on my nightstand.
It's good, saucy. That's good.
And that takes place, if I'm not mistaken, like over a weekend or a night or something.
24 hours.
Yeah,
24 hours.
And so that's why I was like,
it goes back and forth in
this
time.
is good. Right. But
Yeah.
the actual like main stage.
But the
is like
main thing of the
night,
decision that she needs to make is within a 24-hour period.
which I love. So like I was like, I had seen that in the description, like before I knew it was Reese pick and stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm getting that one.
Yeah. It's
24 hours. I'm in.
Well, spicy. It's good.
Right.
But speaking of Reese, so how was that experience? Was that just like amazing, or was it just like mind blowing to be in that like little world for a little bit?
It was entirely like I feel like it was still so recent because I'm still processing it, and I still kind of I'm like, did that really happen? Because I remember when my editor called me up and I was sitting on my couch, like it was a Saturday. I had come back from a leg of tour and I was like, why is my editor calling me on a Saturday? And I know I made her repeat it like several times because I was like, what? Are you sure? Is this real? And it was complete surreal experience, wonderful, beyond my wildest imagination. And got to connect with so many readers, so many book clubs, just an absolutely incredible experience.
Oh yeah, no, and I always love when they when they have the authors do the clues for like the next month's pick. That's always really fun. Yeah. So congratulations on that, because that is a big thing. Any of those book clubs is such a great boost for authors that it's fantastic. So incredible. Yay. Yeah. Fun on that. Okay. Sorry. Good meeting to interrupt.
I was just going to ask her to tell everyone where that they can find her online and on social media. They want to look her up and find out more about her.
Yeah, so I love Instagram. I'm there at Megan L. Miranda. I'm probably there more than I should be. My Twitter is also Megan L. Miranda. And then my Facebook is at author Megan Miranda. And then my website's meganmiranda.com. So it should be pretty easy to find, but I'm probably most active on Instagram and love to connect with readers there.
Yay. How about you, Lisa?
Awesome.
Where should people go for you guys?
This is usually Liz's spiel, but
I
get to
do
it today.
You get to do it today.
We also love Instagram, and we are at Lisa and Liz over there. This is a long story, but there was a dance team that was Liz and Lisa. So we flipped it around and we're Lisa and Liz. Only there though. Everywhere else, Twitter, we're Liz and Lisa. And Facebook, we're Liz Fenton and Lisa Steinke. And then our website is lizandlisa.com. But Instagram is also our favorite.
Yeah. And Megan, it sounds like, are you on a once a year book kind of thing going on right now?
I am, yeah.
Wow.
So
that's
nice.
You're busy. So
fingers crossed for next summer, but I've got some work to do with it.
Okay. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll see you again next summer.
Yes.
Lisa, thank you. Okay, everybody, this is our last couch surfing. So we're maybe not hanging it up for good. Just taking a little break.
Yeah,
you guys have a lot on your plate, so we had to
I think we were hoping like we were going to be more in person, and hopefully that we're coming to that, but we're it's not, what is the saying, it's not goodbye, it's just see you later, or something like that. So we're still around, and we'd still love to do more, but this was a great last one, and
this was a really good
I know
one.
Liz is floating in the pool thinking the same thing.
Damn her. So hopefully, hopefully maybe, in a few months when things maybe calm down a little bit. And like you said, even you guys here in San Diego. So hopefully we'll
Right.
convince you to come down and maybe interview some authors in person.
Oh, that would be
really
great.
fun.
That would be amazing. I'm going to
Yeah.
think really good thoughts about that.
Yeah. So that would be good. Megan, best of luck to you. Hope to see you maybe in San Diego one of these days.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
This was great.
Well,
and so
thank
when I
you.
close this out, we don't go back into a green room. So it was really nice meeting you.
Yes, you too.
And Liz, we'll need to have a drink one of these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we will.
All right.
I'm answering for her. I know you.
Oh
No,
God, I
Liz at
said
this
Liz
point.
again.
Oh, did
God.
you? I thought you were like Liz because Liz was.
You were
actually
I need to close out and
My
we need
God.
to close this.
You need a cocktail right now. I'm sending you a virtual cocktail right now. All right.
Bye, Megan. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.